Good morning and good day, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Stephen Rosenlund. I'm the Director of Association Development for CIPE. And welcome to our session this morning, where we're going to be talking about transitioning to strategic agendas, strategic meeting agendas for boards of directors of business associations, a very important topic. And we're delighted to be joined today by William Pawlucy. William is a good friend of CIPE, and very happy to have him here today to share his knowledge and his expertise with us. Brief introduction about William for those who don't know him. William is a seasoned professional with over 30 years of experience in nonprofit consulting. He's the founder and president of Association Options, a top-tier consulting and management firm for nonprofit organizations across the globe. His firm specializes in strategic planning, board and staff development, certification and accreditation development, and other core competencies of association management. William is the author of the Essential Handbook for Nonprofit Leaders. I have my copy right here. A comprehensive guide to nonprofit management, governance, and strategy. Prior to launching Association Options, William held key leadership roles in various industries. He has extensive international experience working with CIPE, among other clients in the Middle East, Africa, Europe and Eurasia, Asia, and other parts of the world, serving clients and helping associations improve performance. He has served on the National Board of Examiners till the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award as an appointee of the U.S. Department of Commerce and the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And he's trained in the proven innovation and improvement management framework, which emphasizes an integrated approach in various management areas to organization excellence. As I said, William's worked with CIPE on and off in various projects for the better part of 10 years, including a number with collaborations with me, and it's been a great pleasure to work with William in different regions, as well as to be part of his work supporting our association development of our association capacity building methodologies and knowledge resources globally. So, William, thank you very much for joining CIPE and our global audience this morning.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you, Steve.
Well, before I turn it over to William, just to go through a few key points here with everyone. First, I want to flag a new resource that's available to you. This is a dedicated landing page on the CIPE website called Association Frontiers, which has a variety of resources for business associations, categorized by 7 domains of organizational excellence, including a number of resources, toolkits, case studies, other information pertaining to organizational excellence. So we'd invite you to all check this out. It's a good resource available to you. And in fact, the toolkit that we'll be sharing with you today will be available on this site after the webinar. So we're talking about strategic meetings and building a strategic agenda and approach to association board meetings. Of course, it starts with a strategic plan. You can't really have strategic discussions and meeting without having a strategic plan to begin with. So a strategic plan is the roadmap for an organization. It guides an organization typically over a period of 3 to 5 years. It's tied to the mission, of course, and the vision of the organization. So how we're going to achieve the mission through specific goals and objectives and strategies or programs that will advance and allow us to achieve each of those objectives. It's very important to have this for purposes of providing guidance to the organization, continuity between boards of directors, a way of achieving forward motion, right? How are we going to get to our destination if we don't know how to get there? And so we need this roadmap. A strategic plan is also a good tool for communicating value to our stakeholders, to members and other stakeholders. It's what we stand for. It's how we're serving the members, how we're representing our industry. And so a strategic plan is part of the part of the brand platform of the organization, and part of the demonstrating our value proposition. It's a tool for empowering the executive director and the staff team. So the plan is typically developed and approved by the board of directors. It provides that roadmap for the staff to implement and to execute, right, with the high level direction and guidance, and infused with the wisdom of the board of directors. A good strategic plan also aligns committees and volunteers to the plan. So is the board working towards the achievement of the plan? Are committees and task forces aligned with our strategic objectives and designed to advance those? Are we aligning resources, right? Have we aligned the budget of the organization, the human resources, the technology, the partnerships, all the other resources at our disposal to achieving the plan? And lastly, a good plan is a tool for building and achieving accountability, right? It's a public stand. It's a public statement about what the organization stands for, how the organization is serving its members and stakeholders, and what stakeholders should expect from the organization. So as a governance tool, I would expect a good plan also has performance measures attached to it, KPIs so that we can measure progress and report progress out to our stakeholders as well. This, of course, is the situation we want to avoid, that the plan goes on the shelf with cobwebs to collect dust, just like all the other ones we've done before, and nobody looks at it, nobody utilizes it. It's not well integrated within the work of the organization. Unfortunately, all too often, this is a phenomenon that we see happen. I like this visual depiction of the of a strategic planning, courtesy of William and his team at Association Options. As a pyramid, right? The strategic planning pyramid, and the apex, the pinnacle is the mission, right? It's what we do as an organization. It's our reason for existence. It's what motivates our plan. Under that are the strategic goals that are aligned to the mission. It's how we're going to achieve the mission. Strategies, performance measures. These are the means through which we're going to achieve those goals and how we're going to measure progress. And then it's at the foundation, it's all underwritten and implemented through this, through action plans, through a business plan that aligns resources, and helps us to put the plan into play within the work of the organization. So I like the visualization. I thought I'd share that with you.
Thank you.
The plan, so implementation, integrating. This is about strategic integration. Which is really integrating the plan within the operations and the governance structure of the organization. So it starts when we have develop the plan and approve a plan. Then it starts with aligning our committees and task forces, as I said, achieving that internal alignment with the governance structure, adding the performance measures and accountabilities, promoting the plan with stakeholders. A good plan is used as a part of the marketing and communications collateral. And there are a whole variety of ways to do that and to promote the plan. And then what we're going to talk about during the session today is keeping the plan top of mind during board and staff meetings and in our communications. How do we do that? And I think we'll provide a nice toolkit for you to help to aid in that process today. Of course, the plan should be typically 3 to 5 years. We review it annually, and then we revise it and update it and reissue a plan when it, once we've achieved it at the end of that period. And of course, we're evaluating progress through our performance measures, KPIs along the way. So, as I said, William's the author of this great book, terrific resource for you. You can find it at a variety of fine retailers around the world through the link or the QR code here. So please be sure to check that out. And we are very pleased to be introducing, as I said, a new tool to you today on developing strategic agenda for association board meetings. It's a step-by-step guide to really transforming
Mhm.
board meetings into strategically focused sessions that drive impactful decision making, and organizational success. And so I'm very excited to get into it. And at this point, we'll turn it over to William to walk us through the tool, and we will have time for discussion and questions at the end. Along the way, if you have any interventions, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll be happy to take those as well. So we're looking for that kind of engagement. So thank you in advance. William, over
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, Steve, excellent wrap up and the importance of strategic planning. I think you're right. You can't have a strategic agenda if you don't have a strategic plan. What's the basis there for it? So I think it's there. And then one of the things that I did offer that's also in addition to this is a strategic plan toolkit. So that's in the chat, or it'll be in the resources as well. So that's a step-by-step on how to build a strategic plan. So if you don't have one, you'll be able to do that and then build your strategic agenda as well. So let me get right to the tool, and please stop me, or if there's any questions that you have, we can stop, because I want to make sure that everything that we're going through is understandable and also, makes sense to you and your organization as well, because you may say, well, how does this apply to me and how do we make it happen? So I wanted to build this toolkit so that it is a step-by-step and it asks the key questions. So when we talk about some of the things that we'll be talking about is why a strategic agenda, and Steve hit that very well. We'll talk about meetings too, why meetings should be strategic. And I think everything that we do, we should be thinking about relevance and value and an impact to our stakeholders, whether it's our members or other stakeholders. And then we'll just step you through what is looking at your current agenda. What does that look and feel like? And I've been through meetings, and I've been through many meetings, and it's committee report, committee report, committee report, cookie break, committee report, lunch, committee report, cookie break, and then new business is at the end. And you never talk about your strategic items because there's like 5 minutes left. And I asked the question of one of my clients. I said, when do you get to your strategic items? Is it on your agenda? He said, of course it is. It's right at the end. And I said, okay, what happens? Everybody rushes out the door. So nobody really gets to to their strategic agenda. And then one of the other things, you can have a strategic agenda, but nobody's engaged. So how do we get them engaged into the meeting? And then we also have an implementation guide and how you prepare questions, Q&A around, or questions and answers around how you get this in, because your board may ask some questions. And you can answer them and say, this is why we need it. This is why we're restructuring, because a lot of boards really love to have do things the way they've done it for the past 30 years or 20 years. We have to break them out of that. Strategic agendas will get us there. And then really the other part is after your meeting, so you just can't have an agenda in a meeting. You really have to think about, how do we evaluate that meeting after we're done? So we'll be talking about that. And then also I put in here, because I know it takes time, I have a transition schedule in here as well. And I have a sample template for a strategic agenda. So I was thinking, if this was me, what would I need to make sure to make it happen? So why do strategic agendas matter? And Steve hit on a lot of these. A strategic plan has goals. They're the goals that are going to help us achieve the mission. And at the top of that pyramid that Steve had are the members or your key stakeholders. They're the ones that we do everything for as an organization. And then the other part is, when we talk about advancing the strategic plan, we want a return on investment, number one, in all the activities that we do. We also want a return on mission. So those are the two things that we look for in our strategic plan. If we can do that and we can provide relevance and value, so return on mission, return on investment, and relevance and value, we've really hit the mark with our strategic plan. And I think decision-making, how many times do we sit at board meetings and we sit there and we're like, nothing's getting done? People are like on their iPads, on their tablets. People are leaving for smoke breaks, coming back an hour later in the board meeting after big decisions have been made. So I think really thinking about, how do we make decision-making happen there and allow for that 50,000-foot level thinking, where we're not just doing committee work at the board table. We are actually thinking about advancing the plan. And we talked about engagement earlier. And I think efficient use of time, if you have a strategic agenda, you don't get off track into different areas. So let's start with the first section. And Steve, if there's any questions, I can stop in the middle if we need to. But that's really just more of the prelude or the prelude to all of this. And so as we look through this toolkit here, and I'll open this up here. Let me go a little bit bigger. So what I wanted to have every section so that you can actually give this to your board so they can read this, and it gives them the rationale as you're stepping through. And I would recommend taking this and stepping through this with your board or a smaller subcommittee of the board that is going to transform your agendas to a strategic agenda. So really, a lot of things that throw off a strategic agenda or board meeting is there's too many personal agendas. Everybody's trying to seek their own interest. They have a conflict of interest potentially. They just can't really get there. There's no focus. You get lost in discussions around talking about what type of muffins you're going to have at your meeting, or coffee, or the drapes that are going to be hanging in the meeting room, rather than thinking about what are the big picture things that we want to accomplish. And I think it's just very much disjointed in a lot of ways, and there's no accountability. That's another piece of that. When you look at agendas, it's like you went through it, but what did we do? What did we accomplish? So I think that's a big thing. So in this first part, I would say you list the top pain points. Like, what are the things that are really slowing down your board meetings? List them all out here and just brainstorm them and say, okay, these are the things that are just not getting us where we need to. And then the next thing is, what do we want to change about our board meetings and how they're run? So looking at the pain points, matching that up to how we want to change is a big deal to start with, because we're admitting that we have a problem with our board meetings. And if you have your board engaged in some of this process and you chunk it out with them, they are on board with you. You don't have to sell them this product or this agenda. So again, it's advancing the strategic plan. So let's talk about the next phase of the toolkit, which is introduction to strategic meetings. And this is really why we need to align the board meetings. We have a fiduciary responsibility as an organization to align our board meetings to our strategic goals, because if we don't, we're not doing what we need to for our members and our key stakeholders. So there's a couple of things I think a strategic agenda really takes and drives the organization forward. And there's one piece that I wanted to take out, that if you're not using this now in your agendas, you should really think about using it. They're called consent agendas. So you don't have to have committee reports that are read out at your board meetings. You don't have to have certain pieces of the meeting that you have to go over word by word. You can have a consent agenda. So that means there are items on the agenda, routine, non-controversial items that can be put into the agenda. It's your minutes, it's your financial report, it's your committee reports. And then what you could say is, we're moving forward. We approved the consent agenda and we're able to move along with business. So just think about all the times that you're sitting there for hours listening to committee reports. People should be prepared prior to coming to a board meeting and do their duty and make sure that they're reading everything in advance and prepared to make decisions. But there are items that you don't have to read word for word in your meetings. So it saves a lot of time to be able to do that, to have a consent agenda. So if there's more information you might need around a consent agenda, you can email me or Steve. We have a lot of information around that. So this part of the worksheet, what I would love you to do, and if we were together in a workshop on this, is to really list your goals of your organization. So work with your board. And so what I've done here is also giving you an opportunity. If you don't have a strategic plan, because we have the toolkit, this gives you a way to sit down with your board and say, what are our goals? Even if you don't have a written down strategic plan, this will take you through it. And by the end, you'll say, okay, we have 5 goals. So again, 3 to 5 goals for every organization. So what are the top 3 to 5 priorities? So we're already starting strategic planning here. And then the question is, look at every single one of those goals and see how they align with your current goals. So take your meeting agenda and compare it to, are we actually achieving, and take your old agenda and mark on there, are we actually matching up to this goal? Or are we matching up to this goal? Or we have no match at all? So I love that, because you're building at least your strategic plan. If you don't have it, at least the goals that you're trying to achieve over the next 3 years? And then matching up your current meetings, do they support those goals? So consent agenda. So we do have a box here. So these are items that you think could be moved from your current meeting. So take a look at your current agenda and all of the topics that you're currently reviewing and the time it takes for each of those topics. Do you have committee reports, financial reports, all of those things that could be moved to a consent agenda? So I would make a list here of those items that you don't think need to have discussion. They can be approved all in one shot prior to the start of the meeting. And then that helps to free up your agenda for more strategic discussion. So it doesn't mean that if you chunk these items, so you take your committee reports or you take some of these things in there, a board member can say, I want to pull out one of the items for discussion into our regular meeting. So it's not like you're throwing it in there and then you're never allowed to discuss it. During your meeting, you'll be able to say, I'm going to pull something out of the consent agenda and we're going to talk about it. So I think that's going to be a huge piece and a huge time saver for your meetings. And I have another tool that's sitting on my desk that I'm going to talk about a little bit later that will save you a lot of time as well. Couple this with that, you'll be able to fly through meetings, but not rush through meetings. And then I think also the next thing is, what challenges do you face in aligning meetings with the strategic goals? So I would list them here and say, well, one of the challenges is we don't get enough participation in our meeting. Folks are not prepared for those meetings, or we don't discuss the right topics. If we're talking about advocacy and we're not touching on our advocacy plan, our policies and our positions, and those pieces, we've missed a big opportunity to make our strategic plan work for us, or our strategic agenda. So I would think of your agenda should be focused on everything that's in that strategic plan, and everything that's not part of the strategic plan or those strategic goals should be questioned. It should not be on the agenda. So we'll talk a little bit about that later as well, but I wanted to bring it up here because I think it's important. So the next piece is looking at your current agenda. So pull your last, I would say, if you pull your last 6 months of agendas, and if you're only doing meetings twice a year, you probably should think about looking at those as well, and maybe another year prior to that. But take a look at your agendas and start going through the process. So for each item on your most recent agenda, what I would do is put an S or an NS, so strategic or non-strategic. So those would be the things that I would put on there. Take a look at that and just do it from that standpoint first. So look at your first agenda and classify items as strategic or non-strategic. And then what you could do is and just count up and just say, okay, 8 items out of 10 were tactical or non-strategic. And I would say strategic or tactical, put an S or a T. And then you would say 20% of our agenda is strategic. So that's a great way to identify if that is the case in terms of what your percentage of your agenda supports strategic goals. And then also the other things is, now as you're trying to align your agenda items with the strategic goals, like what problems or issues do you encounter when you try to do that, when you're trying to align it? It could be like we were talking about, people aren't prepared, they're not reading. If people have their own agendas, maybe they're wearing a different hat, they're not wearing your business association's hat, and they're saying, this is not what I'm thinking about, I don't want to advance this. So what are the issues when you try to align agenda items with strategic goals? And it could be that some board members say, I like it the way it was. Okay, then we have to question why. Why do you like it the way it was? So what are the challenges? And I would list them here because we need those challenges later to try to overcome them. And then in terms of templates too, for developing a template for a strategic agenda. So I would say that agendas aren't all the same. So you may have an agenda for a strategic plan agenda. You may have a board meeting agenda. You may have a committee meeting agenda. But all of those should really focus on strategically executing against what we're trying to achieve in that agenda itself. So there is a template, and I'll show you real quick. I'll roll down here in attachment A. So this is one example of a strategic agenda that I think would be fabulous to be able to use. So there's a few elements in here that I think are really great. So it's your business association's name right at the top. But the great thing is, put the mission on top, our vision and our goals. And then we put the 4 goals for this organization. It was community partnerships, member engagement, education, and research. And what I would also ask to include within your agendas is a conflict of interest statement, confidentiality statement, and also for those that are here in the States as well, and not our international partners, but our international partners, to think about this as antitrust or anti-competitive statement as well. We're not trying to stoke anti-competitive discussions during our meeting. We want to make sure we're staying away from that. But I always love starting the meetings with a disclosure of conflicts and saying, okay, we're here. Welcome, everyone. Does anyone have a conflict with any of the items that we have on our agenda? So this is looks like about a 2-hour meeting. And the first 15 minutes is really looking at what are our highlights? What have we done as an organization? What has been very successful within our organization? So you start the meeting with success. And everybody's thinking about success, your strategic planning dashboard, which I would highly recommend. If you don't have a dashboard for strategic planning, we do talk about it in the strategic planning toolkit. And then a financial organizational dashboard. Where's our revenues? Where are our members right now? How are we tracking for our events? So that folks are knowing what's happening within the organization, because you cannot have an effective meeting if everyone's not level setting around or has a frame or a foundation for this is where our organization is. And then the other part is the consent agenda. So here's one example, 10 minutes. We're talking about past meeting minutes, committee reports without actions. So without actions is the key. If there are actions that committees have, then there should be a 1-page committee report that has what their need is and their budget and how it aligns to the strategic plan. So you should have a 1-page. We have how to make a motion and for committees to be able to do that. If you ever need a copy of that, and Steve, if you want that, I can share that with you and we can put that on the site as well. So that's all the consent agenda. And then folks can pull out, somebody can pull out and say, I'm pulling this out of the meeting and we're going to discuss it during one of these. So this organization, for example, focused on 2 of their strategic goals for this board meeting. You don't see any committee reports being discussed or anything else. It's about community partnerships. They have a gold champion for that. And they're talking about the highlights and challenges. They're going to have board discussion. And also what this organization did for 30 minutes, they had a breakout. So groups of people working together. So they have 21 on their board. They had 7 people in one group. So it was 3 groups of 7, I'm sorry. And they discussed the challenges and they came back with solutions, and they had 3 different solutions from the groups. And they came back with a real great implementation strategy for their issues with community partnerships. Same with education. And then the other thing, how to end a good board meeting, is what's keeping you up at night? What's keeping our business association members or our members up at night, our key stakeholders? And then so one of the big mistakes around agendas is doing a call for agenda meeting topics prior to a board meeting. And you get everything all over the board. If you do that, I would say they have to fall into one of the strategic goals of your organization. But I love to have it right at the end of the meeting, future issues for board attention. So then we're building the agenda from there and saying, here's how we want to follow up on this. Here's what we want to do with this. So I just wanted to share this with you because I think it's a great tool. This is just an example. And if you want a copy of this in Word, you can use it, or you can build something like this. But believe me, you'll get engagement when somebody comes into a board meeting and this is what they see, because they're able to do their work instead of just sitting through a meeting and wasting time. All right, so we'll go back up to so that was the template. So using the template, if you can draw something up similar and take your current agenda and build it into that. And then also, what are some of the difficulties in implementing this new agenda format? So this would be resistance from the board, don't have enough information, can't get the committees to cooperate. All of those things are task forces, and we have to solve those issues and problems. So that's your strategic agenda. So start building the template. And the next piece is, how do we get the board engaged in our agendas and it's really getting them engaged in our meetings to advance the mission, to advance the work for our members and our key stakeholders. So consent agenda, perfect. We've already showed you an example of that as well. Another one is within your agenda, and I love having this, is put the outcomes under each of the sections of the agenda. What outcomes are we looking to achieve? Because everyone's reviewing it, and then we can say, we believe that this agenda is going to move ourselves forward before we even start the meeting. The other thing is put a question under one of your items. So one is, let's say in the member growth and engagement goal that you have. So one of the things that you can have in that discussion is, how does this discussion align with our goal of increasing member engagement by 20%? That's a great question. You ask that question, like, what do you mean? Well, that's our performance measure. Like in our strategic plan, we said we're going to increase member engagement by 20%. So that refocuses your agenda. So think of your agenda with the topic, that you're discussing and the outcomes that you're looking to have, and key questions underneath that you're going to be asking strategically of the board. So I think that's that's really just a great thing to be able to do. And then also there's one of the things we talk about is the board going into an executive session. That means you're going in, you're not taking minutes. It's a confidential session. If you had members that were watching the meeting, they're not allowed in the meeting. At that point, the board closes the door. Professional staff team, I hope, is invited to stay, or at least your executive director. But executive session really is to maintain privacy. So if you have an HR issue, if you have a legal issue that you're discussing that you want to preserve confidentiality, or reviewing performance assessments of your executive director, not your whole staff team, because that's your executive director is oversight on that. But so executive sessions are important as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But how do you use them and how you go in and out of them is only really to discuss issues that are really private and they have performance or legal implications. So in your agenda, you may know that you're having one of those sessions and you allocate, let's say 30 minutes where it's going to be closed door, no minutes are taken. You're having those discussions. It's confidential. You leave the meeting. That does not make it into the minutes unless there's a specific action within that session or that private session that then comes out and is in the minutes, but that's it. So I would say in terms of engaging, so I have here an interactive exercise. So take a discussion item and just say, let's apply strategic questioning techniques. So if you have an item in your agenda that you've already built earlier, just put some questions that would prompt your board members to think strategically, like the one, how does this really relate to increasing member engagement by 20%? And then we go into any obstacles. I always talk about obstacles. Are there going to be any obstacles? Let's have the board talk about it. And I would list them here because there are many obstacles. Again, we talked about resistance to change. There's a lot of things. The cooperation, nobody's going to go along with this. We don't have performance measures, so that's an obstacle. So maybe we need to build some performance measures or ways that we're going to measure success within our strategic plan. We bring that into the agenda. And then the next piece is implementation. How do we do that? So we can't just put the agenda out and say, oh, this is working or not working. So there's some techniques here that you could take through your board. I think do a pre-meeting survey, do a survey right after one of your current board meetings and see what folks think of how that meeting is actually running. So short surveys, and then have your new meeting, do a pre-meeting survey. Just say, okay, we want to talk about this. What are your expectations? Do you think that this meeting is going to be effective? It's going to be a good use of our time. And then after meeting, do another survey and see what everyone thought. I think the responses will give you a lot of information for how you can improve the agenda for the next time around. And then also goal tracking is another one, like looking at all of your agendas and how they contributed to achieving your strategic goals, because that's important, because you could take that information and you could show individuals saying at the next board meeting, hey, we talked about this and we made a big impact on achieving this goal within our strategic plan. We've enhanced our member engagement and we've exceeded our goal. Great job. Great job, board. And then I think the other one around engagement is using metrics too. And maybe, looking at attendance at board meetings, participation rates, follow-up actions from meetings. Like, are board members actually following up on the things that they're saying that they're doing? And if they're not, and there's low engagement, we have to ask the question, why? And do we have the right board members in place? And I think just feedback forms, all of those things, you can have a post-meeting feedback form. What areas could we achieve? Those types of things. I like asking, so this is just things that you could do. An annual review of your agendas. You can do a strategic event agenda evaluation checklist. So after each meeting. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. I like asking 3 questions. Was this meeting, was my time used effectively during this meeting? Did we advance the mission of the organization, and what can we change in the future? Those are the 3 questions that you'll just need to ask, and you'll get a lot of great information, and it will transform the way your meetings are run. And there's a worksheet here to assess the impact of your strategic agenda, and based on that feedback, what will you change in the future? So if you tried it for the first time, there's going to be opportunities for improvement, and you'll be able to do that over time. And an implementation checklist, just things that you want to think about. A pre-meeting checklist is prior to the meeting, has each agenda item been vetted for strategic relevance? The next one is post-meeting, gather feedback on the meeting's focus, and then always get the implementation challenges. What were the hurdles during that meeting that we couldn't get our strategic agenda items to move forward? So that's some of the challenges. And then, so your board, I could tell you, is going to ask you questions like, why are you doing this? Were you on a webinar with Steve and Bill and William? Is this CIPE telling you that we have to do this? Why, what is this craziness, this strategic agenda? We love the way we do stuff, and we love to have our hour coffee breaks and smoke breaks. So this is a way to convert your 8-hour meeting, which should be 8 hours and it usually ends up 4 hours, to at least 6 hours. With breaks and everything else. But these are questions. So your board's going to say, how do we make sure that these issues, like these big things that we're doing, doesn't derail, like operational issues don't derail the strategic focus, like micromanagement by the board to get into staff issues, where your staff issues are. And there needs to be clear, it's board governs, staff manages, and the board sets these priorities. The staff then executes on those. So I think there is that separation from strategic discussions and operational issues. So the one thing is, you'll never have 100% strategic agenda. You will have, it's a balance. You'll start out, it's 100% tactical. It'll be 50-50 strategic after maybe 6 months to a year. Maybe it's 70% strategic, 30% tactical by the time you're done. And that's okay, because you may need to talk about some operational issues. So that's one question. Another question is, if an urgent issue requires immediate board attention and decision-making, what do we do? Because we need to make sure that we cover it. Well, there's an emergency agenda that you can put together that still focuses on the strategic issues, but you don't have to. So again, if there's immediate board attention and decision-making, you can still build an emergency agenda. And I always say, build it similar to the strategic agenda, but your focus is on that one topic area. What's that emergency? How does it line up to your strategic plan? And then also, what's the performance? What success do we want to see out of that strategic goal? And how does that apply to this emergency agenda item? So really easy to do, and it could be flexible in terms of how you just pull that, but it's a 1-issue item agenda. How do we balance the need for detailed operational discussions? Because I've heard board says, we'd love to talk about operations. That's what we want to get into. How do we, I don't want to lose that. And then, and then how do we make sure that we're getting into strategic objectives? So consent agenda, all of those things will help us get there. And I think the balance in the agenda of having strategic versus operational is okay. You can have that balance. So telling the board, you're not going to lose it, but remember, staff is taking care of your professional staff team of the operations of the organization. If there is an issue, please let us know so we can discuss it. But we want to try to keep it at the high level and not get into the weeds of the meeting itself. So this is another one. Are we neglecting day-to-day operations? So the key thing is here that the board is not involved in the day-to-day operations of the organization. Your professional staff team is. If the board starts getting into the day-to-day operations of the organization, then there is a problem with something, the staff or trust, or something's happening. And I think that the way to remedy this is to have at the meeting, like we saw in that one example, is there was a financial dashboard, strategic planning dashboard, and you could have summary reports that the executive director or your CEO can provide, and it's pretty clear of what's happening within the organization. It takes care of 80% of we're neglecting the day-to-day operations. We're not. So as a board, you're not. You'll be able to see those dashboards. You'll be able to see, yes, things are on track. Things are moving at a high level. We're good. We trust the executive director. How do we transition from our current meeting structure to this new format without disruption? That's going to be a key question that you're going to be faced with. So I've took another organization through this and I put small elements in it. I put a consent agenda once and that was it. We just had the consent agenda and the board was like, wow, this is terrific. I love it. We don't have to sit through and listen to these committee reports. It's like pulling teeth. And nothing wrong with the committees are very valuable. I just did a session, but you really don't want to read a 30-page committee report when you have 5 committees. You do not want to do that. It's the best way to lose board members. So consent, start with that. And then also after that, maybe take one agenda item and have it focused on the goal, a strategic plan. Slowly let the system get used to it. And then you'll see there'll be greater acceptance. If you try to go from this to a strategic agenda right away, it may be hard. It's like a new medication. You have to get used to it. You're going to break out in rash, but over time it'll adjust to your body. That's exactly what we're thinking here from the medical terms with a strategic agenda. It's the pill that needs to be swallowed sometimes so that it's effective for the organization. Tools and techniques. So if your agenda gets out of focus, out of line, and you have discussions all over the place and you can't get people back to it. So one technique I have is I have a flip chart that has a parking lot. If it gets off topic, let's say, so respectfully, we're going to put that in the parking lot and we'll see if we can, if that matches up to the rest of the agenda, or we'll bring it back if time allows because it's really moving in the wrong direction. So using parking lots, post-meeting evaluations, all of those things can help. I have one tool in front of me right now that I think everyone should pick up and take to their board meetings. Hopefully everybody could see that. So this is, everyone recognizes Elmo. Elmo is wonderful. I bring Elmo to every board meeting, every Zoom meeting. That's why he's on my desk right now. So Elmo stands for enough, let's move on. Enough, let's move on. So the key thing here is this is a very fun way to have individuals at your board meeting say, hey, I think we need to Elmo this conversation, and people throw Elmo. So you see Elmo flying at people. And it's really great. I do it at strategic planning and board meetings, and the conversation moves. This is with a strategic agenda with Elmo, you cannot go wrong. The meetings will just flow and people will laugh. They're not going to get offended when you say, I think we have to Elmo. Everybody laughs when that, and they're like, yeah, I think Elmo. So Elmo is one. So do get your Elmos. I'm sure there'll be a run on Elmos after this meeting. So those are some of the questions. I think if you can list the concerns, that would be great. I think also is a mock Q&A. So with your staff team or with yourself, say, I'm going to try to introduce this. I'm going to have resistance. Let's talk about the questions that the board is going to ask, and let's have the answers written out, ready prior to introducing this, because you're going to have to ask the board, can we go to a strategic agenda? So do a mock or like a practice question and answer session. And then just evaluating afterwards, we talked about this. The questions that I listed earlier, they're right here. And just put this, before you even change the agenda, ask these questions at the end of your next meeting. Was the meeting effective? Did it move the mission forward? Was my time spent usefully, dutifully? What would we change? I will tell you, you will get a ton of information. And then have the board secretary or some officer on your board that's going to take that feedback and put it together and bring it back to the board. Let your board members take the responsibility of bringing this back because they have ownership of this. So and then here's a transition schedule. I'm not going to read through this. I wanted to have this, but I want to tell you, expect resistance, start gradually, focus on wins, build consensus. Those are the 4 things that I think a strategic agenda will get you. And then I have your first couple of meetings, you have an initial shift, intermediate shift, 3 to 4 meetings, a full transition, 5+ meetings, you'll have that. and you'll see where that kind of flows and how this transition schedule aligns. So that is everything within the strategic agenda. I wanted to make sure you had every single tool, every single, I didn't want to leave any stone uncovered. And also I wanted to leave time for Q&A if there's any questions from the group around strategic agendas or issues, and if this would be helpful to the group as well.
William, thank you. Thank you so much for walking us through the tool. It's a great toolkit and set of considerations and questions and smart practices for organizations to begin really rethinking the way that they do their meetings and re-engineering them around with strategic purpose. So I love it. Thank you so much. Yes, please, certainly, if anyone has questions, post them for us now. I have a few of my own.
Yeah. And I
What?
see Majid has a question too. Majid Shabir.
Oh, okay. I see feedback about the session. Yes, feedback would certainly be welcome. And please provide that. We're not hearing you. But you can feel free to post your question here in the Q&A, and we'll do that. I have one from Adam.
Yeah, sure.
As well. Let me take that. And Adam's asking about how we move from the strategic agenda to action that supports and advances the agenda. I guess to me, that speaks to like, there's got to be you talk about dashboards, which I think is a really effective tool to use. So put some of the key performance measures up there on a dashboard for the board to consider and assess progress from meeting to meeting in achieving the strategic goals. How do you balance, when you go sort of objective by objective or goal by goal through the agenda, how do you balance sort of reports about what we've done over the last quarter or the last 2 months versus here's what's forthcoming and how we're advancing the goals moving forward?
Yeah, so I think that so in terms of moving forward, we do have so under each of the agenda item sections, we will have the strategic goal, but under each of those, we're going to be talking about issues that are impacting us now that we need to really talk through. Let's say we're having event issues and things like that, or things that are coming into the future that we see. So I like to think of it as, what are the drivers of change? So one of the things within the agendas I like to know is what's changing within our profession, within our industry, those types of things. And I love to have in the beginning of agenda a little bit of a discussion or visioning around where those things are moving. And so I think that's one piece of it. And what Adam said is to filter down the strategic agenda to activities that support the agenda's priorities. So in your strategic plan, so in the toolkit that we've provided, one of the things that we do recommend is a strategic plan action template. So it's your goal, your strategies, and all the actions underneath that take place, and then the progress towards those actions that are moving forward. So in a strategic plan, in your dashboard, you will have items that are red, yellow, or green. So you think of a stoplight. So all the items in red are not moving forward. All the items in green are completed. The ones in yellow are now moving forward. They're progressing, but the board should really focus on those that are in the red. So if you have that strategic planning dashboard in front of you at the board meeting, what's in the red, and then those items that are in the red should be discussed. How do we advance those items moving forward? So I would say only focus on the items that you think are going to get into the red, because you're not losing sight. If you have that strategic plan dashboard in front of you, and if you do not have the dashboard in front of you, I wouldn't just say you're listing the goals and that's what you're discussing, but every single goal underneath the agenda should have an item that you're trying to advance, that you're trying to discuss, whether it's, the meeting that's coming up, or whether it's a PR plan, that you're putting together, a social media campaign that you're working through and you need input and feedback. So a lot of those things kind of fall into that. And I wish I could pop up. We don't have time, but I have another agenda that actually I did as a sample for someone, but
Terrific. Terrific.
yeah, maybe we can.
We also got, Majid's question came through and he said board accountability is one of the most difficult things. How can we do it if things are not moving in the right direction? Normally board, we don't evaluate meeting results. Normally board meetings move without any strategic plan. The agenda is
Yeah.
focused around short-term goals. And I think that that's what this is designed to address. But talk maybe a little bit more, William, about accountability and how this can be used as a means of instilling accountability within the board for advancing the agenda and some of those long-term goals.
Yeah, so I think that you know, in turn, so let me share, I'll share something really quickly. So this is the strategic plan toolkit that I was talking about. And this gives you kind of so I think it's important to have a strategic plan. I think that's going to really help you move the organization forward. And if there is a document here that I want to show, so this is the strategic plan. So you could build this really easily with your organization. You could just take this and say, what's our goal? What's our strategy to achieve that goal? And then what are we going to do over the 3 years of the strategic plan? So having something like that, I think, is going to be important to do. And then also, so here's a strategic plan, and then the action plan is going to be critical as well. But I just wanted to show you a couple of quick examples. But in the strategic plan toolkit, I would just sit down with your board to say, what are the current key areas of focus? Like, where do we want to focus in the next year even? So don't even think about 3 years, but in the next year. So we're not thinking about just meeting to meeting, right, Steve? I mean, that's what we're thinking about. So what are, like, even the top 3 goals that we want to achieve as an organization? So if you don't have a strategic plan, do that, and then you can at least start the process of building the agenda and that strategic agenda. And it's Majid, right? So Majid, what I would do is sit down with your board with this document, because it will take you through that process. And then that'll be the first step in getting there. So I think this is the mechanism to do it. And I've done it with organizations that have never had a strategic plan. Their meeting is like, they don't even have an agenda. They just sit down and talk and nothing happens. And they go home, and it's probably the same with your board meetings. So I would, if you can commit your board to being able to do that and using this and stepping through, I think it'll be a world of difference. You need their buy-in. That's going to be the critical piece.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying about the first, I wrote down your quote. The first step is realizing that you have a problem.
Yes.
And I think a lot of boards maybe don't know that they have a problem because they're just doing things the way that their predecessors did and the way it's always been done in the association. Do most boards know that they have a problem, or are they in denial, or are they just doing things because that's the way it's always been done? Because it's interesting, you say, William, when you ask them, actually you get a lot of feedback about, oh, we really could be approaching our meetings in a better way, but they're typically not asked.
Yes. Yes, they're not asked. They don't know that there's a problem because they've been doing it the same way. They've been showing up for meals, and that's their big thing. And I bet you, if you asked your board members about the work that they're doing, some of your board members may say that they feel like they're not getting anything out of it, and it's just a boring board meeting. And accountability is a big thing too, as Majid said too. So one of the things after every board meeting is a commitment from the board and others to have an action plan after you leave. So you'll have your minutes, but also say, these are the actions that we've talked about. Who's accountable for them? And if nobody wants to sign up, then I would, as the executive director, I know it's hard to do with strong boards, but I've done it. And I said, well, if nobody's accountable, we can't move this forward. So are we interested in this or not? And that'll be a good sign. So then you send the action item list out afterwards and see what happens. And then if you don't have accountability, you have a board problem. And if you have a large board, you may only need half of that board, actually. So if people aren't accountable, they shouldn't be on the board. And a smaller board is better than a large board that does nothing. And I would say ideal board size 7 to 11 would probably be my idea of a great board, but it depends on the competencies that you need to advance the plan.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, William, for your time and expertise today, your generosity with CIPE and our partners, and all the wisdom you've shared. I think, it's Halloween here. We're celebrating in the US. I feel like I should ask you about horror stories. Some of your favorite horror
Oh,
stories from board meetings gone awry. But I don't want to end on a negative note. So I think we've addressed some of the risks involved in doing board meetings the old way, in sort of the old school way without a strategic focus. And hopefully the toolkit that we've shared with you all today and that's available on the website provides a nice path forward in sort of re-engineering your board meetings and your processes with more of a strategic focus and purpose that's going to drive impact for your organization. So
and Steve, Lars did ask if I could provide a sample agenda that showed a transformed agenda. And what I'll do is I'll send that over
excellent.
to you, so you have that. So you have the strategic plan toolkit, you'll have the strategic agendas as well. And of course this toolkit as well, or the workbook. But I think if you
Terrific.
see an agenda, I think it'll definitely be helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much, William. Thanks to all of you for your time and participation today. And we'll be sharing the tools that we just discussed with you, and look forward to more of these sessions in the future. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Steve.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.